it the fucker took the some of the storage space from the Linux partition for some reason. Huh, I wonder why I just put 7 megabytes of free space in there. Let's figure out where we can stick that 7 megabytes. That's going to aggravate me. We can't do anything with it. Alright, whatever. Alright, we're going to pretend it's not even there. I can't see you kind of thing, you know what I mean? We can resize it after we install our operating system. Click Next. You're going to get a pop-up window that says, hey, dude, you've got this much RAM, but you're only using this much for swap space on your system. Click Yes to continue unless you really want to follow the advice of the installer, and then click Write Changes to Disk. And like I started to say, I know I kind of went off about the file system and how they work and how they're organized, but it's important at this point that you have an understanding of the way that the concepts surrounding file systems and things like that. It's actually critical because that's one of the most important parts of setting up your system, is determining what partitioning type or file system type to use, how much space to make, what types of partitions you're going to need. And you have a lot of other users recommend making a separate mount point or partition for your boot mount point, which is where your Linux operating system's booting files are located, the things that boot up the operating system. I've actually used to do that because I don't have Windows at all. It's a waste of time, because if your boot partition's screwed up, or you got to edit something and it's not part of your Linux partition, it's not on the same partition, it's more of a pain in the ass to repair it. Alright, right here you can click Next unless you want Windows to be the default boot option, because you'll have a boot screen every time you reboot your computer. You'll have a little selection window to select if you want to boot Linux or Windows. Go ahead and click Next unless you want Windows to be default. You'll still be able to choose, but if you don't make a choice after so many seconds, the default is automatically selected. And this just asks you which one you want to be default. And it's the goal of this website to break you of Windows, so of course I'm going to recommend using Linux as default. Uncheck Office and Productivity. Leave everything else selected, and make sure this says Customize Later. Do not select Customize Now. Click Next. And what that means, this is for the packages to install. And what we essentially just did is say, just install a basic desktop, and we'll set the rest up later after the installation. And this is what I alluded to before. We do not want to install all the other packages and everything else, because if one of them's corrupted, then we have to start this entire process over. We have to literally reboot the fucking computer. It's aggravating. And B, by skipping them, when we install them later, the ones we want, we'll have the latest versions. So we won't have to waste time updating things that we just wasted time installing, as we'll already have the latest versions on our initial installation of the packages after we have a working desktop installation. Alright, now it's going to start preparing to install the packages. And if it selects any packages that it needs to as a dependency to install the further packages, it'll pop up a little box that said, hey, some of these packages are required before I can install, and then it'll ask you to say OK. And evidently that's a thing of the past, because it didn't do that just now. But if it does, just select OK to continue. Anyway, when this install process is complete, down here on the right, it'll say reboot, and then up here you'll see a message that says, hey, I'm done, reboot me. And then click reboot, remove the DVD from the DVD drive, that way it doesn't show you the install screen all over again. Otherwise you might get pissed, because you'll have to reboot your computer again. But anyway, click reboot, remove the DVD, and then as it boots up, when it gets done booting up rather, you will see a little screen that says that it's an initial configuration setup prompt, where you set up your initial user account. Like I alluded to before, you have a root user account, but you do not use that unless you're doing administrative stuff. Otherwise, you're only using a user account. This keeps your system safe, because if you get hacked or a virus while you're using a user account, it can't affect the rest of the system, only your user files. That's one of the advantages of using Linux, is controlled access and damage control. But I have never heard of anybody getting hacked or getting a virus, so I wouldn't be worried about that either. Alright, so anyway, I'm going to cut this video, and then when it comes to the initial, or the configuration screen for the initial configuration, I will pick the video back up, run through the options for that, and that'll conclude this video. So, alright, here goes nothing. Alright, check it out. I said that I was gonna like come back to this when it was done, but I lied. I'm not going to. I'm just gonna, this was taking forever. Like I said, it's running on a virtual machine, which makes it even slower than normal. So here's the deal. When you reboot, you're going to come to an initial configuration screen. And by the way, I just checked on the website for the Fedora project. Extension 4 file system will be supported and available with the next release of Fedora. Anyway, when you reboot, it's going to ask you to set up a username and an initial account name, which is you're going to be your default user account. Just enter that. It's going to ask you to select your date and time. And I would select NTP, which is Network Time Protocol. Select the tab for it to use network time. It's always accurate. And that should be just about it off the top of my head. I can't think of anything else. But I'm going to go ahead and stop this. It's probably been about 20 minutes, and it's only got a few of these packages installed, 152 out of 1,000. So, I mean, it's just, I'm not waiting around all day. But, alright, so that should cover it. If there's anything different or significant that you don't understand, use the forums to ask a question.